All right. All right, guys. Can you hear me now? Hey, Scott. Hi again. Yep. Sorry about that. I had to reboot my computer. I think Scott knows how internet stuff can be. Okay, good, good. Don't know where I left off. Because we're just chatting about the murder in Memphis. Linda DB. Yes, we were. And again, I'm gonna kind of back up a little bit because I'm not sure at what point it dropped. It was hard to see on my end. Hey, Cool Frog. Good to see you. All right, so we're gonna back up. We have a little people. Hey, Lady Magdala. Hey, guys. Again, sorry for the little bit of snafu there. Yes, please go re-smash the like button. Thank you, Allegra, as usual. So, just to kind of go back, what we were talking about is obviously it's been a very, very rough week. Um, in particular, talking about the murder in Memphis at the hands of five police officers. And honestly, I try to be as understanding as I can be, but there's no other way to say that than that. And I was talking about it from the perspective of being a Leo, a former Leo's wife, which means Leo means law enforcement officer. Um, Talking about how number one, it sickened me to watch the video, which I'm not going to show. If it's several places on YouTube as well as the national news, if you want to see it, but also talking about kind of, the history from when my husband started as far as in law enforcement to kind of where it says, "It's shocking. I saw you in Pascal's chat." Yeah, you did. And I will say this, Pascal is probably, when it comes to news items, one of my favorites as far as to watch. And the reason is it's kind of like you're sitting in a living room with a friend, and he tends to be very respectful of other opinions, tends to be very expectant, very not middle of the road, as in he won't call something bad bad, but as in respects everyone's opinion, versus some others that tend to have an agenda that I kind of saw. From the law enforcement perspective, I had just said, yeah, once again, a huge fan and cheers to Pascal and family. I was talking about how my intention was never to date a cop, let alone marry a cop. And one of the reasons that my husband kind of won me over is because of the way that he treated people. I used to halfway joke that he knew how to arrest somebody and make them like it, which sounds insane, but basically, he was always, "Yes, sir. No, sir. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. Scott, no. I love your sense of humor. I should probably not be driving 70 miles per hour and texting with fingers. No, you should not be texting at all if you're driving." I'm kidding, at a red stop. Okay. But when I originally thought I might become a police officer in college, I had an extra job working at a mall near here, and also working at Sears, which some of you are old enough to remember when they were actually in existence. And I worked in loss prevention, which basically means what I would do is, yes, Scott, stop letting this co-drive. Absolutely. I would catch shoplifters and I would catch internal theft. And a lot of times, because we were connected to the mall, we actually had backup from the mall. So I knew several officers. They weren't bad people. It's just not really an interest in really getting to date one of them until I met Mark. And the biggest reason was because Mark, um, by contrast, was very respectful for everyone he encountered, no matter what they did. He used to tell me, his job was to stop behavior. It didn't necessarily mean that that person was a good person or a bad person, but they made a bad decision. As long as they were respectful and stayed in line, he was respectful to them. It was yes sir, no sir. I never heard him speak ill or have a rough voice to anybody. Lady Magdala, I worked at Sears and I met my first hubby there. He was in LP, and LP is loss prevention, and that is actually what I did. A friend of mine wanted us to work there together, and nothing looked interesting. I didn't even know what LP was when I applied for it, to be honest with you. But now remember, I was 19. So I also got to know more police officers, even though I'd been surrounded with them pretty much my entire life. And I can say even then, there was a big difference in the way that people acted and reacted to people. My husband was an officer when I was a dispatcher. Difficult dynamic to be in. Yes, it is a difficult but dynamic to be in because it went from the position having respect, and quite honestly, they would have more people apply to be police officers than they would have spots for, to where they would be more selective. They picked people who not only had the physical attributes, but also had the intelligence to go through and take essentially what was the equivalent of a year of law school in just a few months. If only like more like your husband, that attitude, the world would be a better place. Yeah. And I also did a lot of ride-alongs with a lot of people, worked with a lot of great people, but some of them, just like in any business, now I'm in the banking industry, as you guys will know, there are fabulous people. There are people that are not so fabulous. That's the case in any profession that you go into, whether it's YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. Some people there are people with great intent, and some people are there without. The difference being, though, when you have somebody in that position of authority, it can be very dangerous given the attitude. Fast forward to, and I was saying that we didn't want either one of our kids to go into the profession, and part of the reason was because it was getting worse and worse and worse. I intended to become a police officer until we started dating, and then decided that me being on midnights because he'd been on so long, him being on days was probably not a good way to start a marriage. There's a reason that a lot of the officers' marriages are not successful. It's because it's a really really stressful job. Hey, clumsy convert. Yep, clumsy clairvoyance. Hey, thank you very much. What has really, I guess, turned my stomach is some people trying to blame the victim for what happened to him. Guys, I know he ran, I know he upset the police officers, but there is nothing that justifies the response that these guys did. It's one thing to subdue somebody enough that they're under arrest and that they're not a threat to themselves or anyone else. And it isn't quite another to do what we saw. The thing that bothers me the most, I think, is that they had the dash cams and they had the body cams, which means they weren't worried about that. Um, that bothers me to the core. It bothers me not only because of what happened to this boy, it bothers me when it comes to my son being out there being a lieutenant and the perception that people are starting to give of him. It bothers me when it becomes a us against them mentality in anything. We see it in politics today. In fact, that was what I was going to talk about at first. The fact that we've lost the ability to have a debate and an argument and a disagreement without it getting into personal and name calling, and kind of decided to wait on that for a while. Linda DB, thank you for the gifted membership. Yes, did not see that, probably because I went off for just a little while. Sandra Ramirez, good for you. My friend ended up in divorce. And yes, there's a lot of divorce when it comes to being in that environment. Laura Christine, Linda D, I'm on mobile, I must not have gifts turned on. Yes, if you want to get a gift membership, you do have to make sure it's turned on. Lori M, so disturbing. Yes. And at the end of the day, should he have complied? Should he have cooperated? Yeah, but does that mean that he deserved what he got? No. Does that, I mean, even my husband was like 5 officers responding to any type of traffic stop is just unheard of. And Memphis is not the best area. Yeah, so, this is what they did knowing it was on camera. I think that's the part that shocks me, um, that they felt like that this was okay. At Clumsy Clairvoyant says, cut my hair." Yes, I did cut my hair. Yeah, there was 5. If you look on the videotape, there was 5 officers that were actually involved. There were a few people that were standing around, not stopping it, not doing anything, and to me, I'm sorry, I hope we see charges for those too. If this same boy with 4 of his friends had been involved in, let's say, a liquor store robbery, okay, and some of the others went and did what these officers did, that boy would be charged with a death too. It's the same thing. By doing nothing, they did everything. Sandra, yeah, classic example of excessive force. It upsets me so badly. Um, Scott always turned on. I never get gift membership. Wait, what are we talking about? Um, love Scott's sense of humor, of course. Lauren, Christine, that's so disturbing. Yes, it's disturbing. And especially since, I have to say, as someone who didn't want their child to go into this field, I'm pretty proud of him when it comes in there. Rabbit said I was an MP, but it was in the early 70s. I don't know where these police are all about anymore. Too much violence. Yeah. And I don't know why. Um, my husband started, I'm going to guess a little bit, he can correct me, in the late 70s. Um, and it was really about trying to make a difference, but a lot of them got disillusioned really quickly when they figured out that before they would even be done with their paperwork, the person would be out. I have seen times where from the outside it seems like someone used excessive force when the reality is you had someone who was under the influence of something that basically made them lose control of their mind, control what they were doing, feel no pain. But that's not what we're talking about with what happened in Memphis. We're talking about an actual beating. Um, the department's gotten really political, and a lot of people pulled the pin. Yeah. It wasn't even excessive force. It was an outright thug style beating of a handcuffed man. Yeah. Yeah. And for new members and new people listening, this is not kind of the normal just let's chat content. Usually I have this very planned out and I did, but kind of felt like it was really important as most of the regular and all the members know. Like I said, we're a law enforcement family. My son is a lieutenant in the sheriff's department here and is really trying to make a difference with a lot of the officers, trying to look at the fact that there's a lot of mental illness that goes into it, trying to look at different things. But, and I'm not going to pretend like I have all the answers because I absolutely don't. It just seems like, though, we're losing our ability in a lot of different areas to be kind and losing our ability to control our anger and control not hurting each other. Nurse M, hello. It broke me that he yelled for his mom. I didn't watch it. I just heard that he did. Yes, I did not get that far into it either, but that is my understanding that he yelled for his mom. So, seeing if we have any other comments. And I don't know, um, Cool Frog and I kind of talked about this on one of his streams. When it comes to anger and it comes to difference of opinions, it's like we're losing control all over. He and I talked about the fact that, we had one political affiliation and then kind of switched over at one point. And my point was to him was, look, if you come at me screaming at me and yelling at me and calling me names, if you come after me, um, that's not how I'm going to see your point of view at all. But it seems like that's all we know how to do. And it seems like when it comes to respecting people, we've lost the ability to do that as well. I know here in Nashville, they've lowered standards to become a police officer. They're so shorthanded. They're basically begging people. I don't know if anyone at this point that it's a profession that anyone would want to choose. Yeah, oh, Alicia, let me tell you. Um, I mean, it's heartbreaking to see how we think it's okay. And I'm not going to pretend. I was having this conversation with somebody in a chat a little while ago. Is it that it's really getting worse, or is it that we know about it more? I think it's a little bit of a combination of both. I think we know about it more, and I also think that people are just somewhat immune to the idea that there's consequences for their actions. And if you're someone that's in control, then there's a responsibility of being in control. Brandy, that Brandy check, thank you so much for the super sticker. I know this is one very hard to talk about. Sandra said, I also think it's departmental view. I know there is no tolerance when it comes to any kind of excessive force. Yeah. My husband shared when he was involved in his first pursuit, how scary that was. And the particular person that they were trying to stop got out of the car and ran. And even the judge at the time said something to the effect of, why is he still able to stand if he ran? So there was a mentality of that at one point, but that's changed. But then we still see to see things like this. And there are thousands of stops every day that people are able to be respectful. There are thousands of stops every day. But if even one of these are happening, it's just not okay. Linda DB, I think sometimes the police and people in general have an expectation of behavior, and the slightest trigger sets them off. Yeah, absolutely. I can't imagine wanting to go in the field. The public is frightening at this point. Yeah. This is my husband, by the way, the one we're talking about. Only the amount of force necessary to overcome suspect resistance is allowed. Anything more is excessive force. Yep. Conditioning, yes, the responsibility of those in control have authority should be the ones we can trust. Sad that's not the case. Even asking an officer for ID can get someone hurt. Yeah. And we can't pretend that that's not the case. And we can't, it's one of those things where it's if this, then that. If you have let's say a 14-year-old kid, and that 14-year-old steals a candy bar, right? They're going to get in trouble for stealing the candy bar, but you don't expect that they're going to get in as much trouble as they would be if they had gone in and, say, beaten someone with a baseball bat. And the reason that I say that is just because someone broke the law or just because they did something that they shouldn't have done does not warrant that degree of force, ever. Never. And as a parent, our kids are not perfect. They're what we call at the point where we can exhale a little bit. But they would have gotten in some trouble had they got caught doing some of the things that they did. When David was about 18, which is in the mid to late 90s, he was one of those kids who decided that he was going to wear all black. That was kind of a thing. He used to go up to Sonic every night to walk his girlfriend home. Neither one of them had a car. She lived in the same apartment complex. There was an officer that stopped them every other night. ID'd him, hassled him. We were very clear with our kids. You don't talk to police. You answer what's asked. You don't elaborate. They want to search your car. We tell them no. They try to get you to give them a statement. It's lawyer. It's one word. And this is coming from a very police family because we know what can happen when people choose not to do that. And when you talk about minorities and you talk about even someone who happens to live in an area that is perceived as being not as affluent or not as, I almost want to say not as good, but that's not the way I want to say it, as another place, that they deserve some type of other behavior because of that is even more appalling. And these are kids in a there is no such thing as a safe community, relatively safe community, being hassled for walking a girlfriend home. I cannot imagine if he had been in a different situation or been a different person, how bad that could have turned out. And I don't know what the answers are. I really wish that I did. Um, Hi, Mr. Tish. That's funny. He'll love that. But like I said, I just wanted to come on and say, even from I kind of got sucked into some Twitter things, which I try my best not to do recently, but about, well, this guy deserved this because he ran. This guy deserved this because of X, Y, or Z. The reality is nobody deserves that. Nobody. Nobody. Nobody deserves that. And nor, the men who did this, neither do his parents deserve what they're getting either. It's a horrible, horrible situation. It's one that nobody wants to find themselves in. Tish is giving insight and personal thoughts, commentary, says none of this said in the stream to taking his legal advice. Nope, no legal advice at all. I don't know the answers either, but no one deserves the treatment that young man deserved, and victim blaming is very harmful. Yep, agreed. Nobody deserves that ever. Yeah. And I am one of these people that really look at, what can we do to make any impact whatsoever? Um, the only thing that I keep coming back to is it's really important what we talk about. Chris Mullen, no, nobody deserves that. Yeah. We have to it's so funny that a lot of people want to say everybody has a right to their opinion as long as mine. Everybody has the right um to this, that, or something else. But what I'm really talking about is my rights. And I think when we're a creator on YouTube, when we're in conversations, when we're talking, um, it's important to realize that what we're actually talking about is people and try to give grace where we can, but where we can't, stand up and say this is not okay. Laura Christine says, I don't know the answers either, but nobody deserves treatment. No, no. It's frustrating this happens and it turns into Leah bashing. Good officers do exist and they hate nothing more than the bad ones. Yes. And that's something that get overlooked. We tend to want to paint everybody with the same brush and nobody wants to be painted with the same brush, right? Um, there are a lot of police officers who want to get out there, do the best they can, and they want to go home. The environment does tend to harden them some. I'm not going to lie and say that doesn't happen. It does. But it happens. Haley Mouse, my niece became a police officer here in England last year. I worry for her safety. There's so much more respect for LE now. But there are bad cops. It's not surprising. Yep. There are bad cops. Good officers exist. Unfortunately, those men were not good officers. Yep. Yep. Absolutely. And like I said, this wasn't exactly what I had planned to talk about tonight, but just, I knew, Sandra, I know how you feel. I know, when I was working, one of my managers thought it would be fun, because I knew that there was a police shooting that day where someone had lost their life. She thought it would be funny to tell me that 2 officers were waiting for me in the lobby. And of course, Sandra, you can imagine what I thought is that something had happened to my husband. You get used to if something major happens, your loved one's not at home. I remember 9/11, Mark got stuck watching a water tower while I was, home with the kids, that kind of thing. And there is a lot of sacrifice when it comes to that. There's a lot of good people out there. Yeah, she did. She didn't know any different. I think what had happened was my husband actually sent me flowers that day. So there was a florist out there waiting for me, but she turned that into there was 2 police officers out there waiting for me, and of course, my heart sank. We've had friends that unfortunately we buried. Yeah, yeah, it was horrible, but again, an unintentional horrible because she didn't exactly know what she was doing. I think the only thing that we can do as far as individuals go is really pay attention to how we treat each other. Really pay attention to if someone has something of a different opinion, really paying attention to what's going on. You see something, say something. I don't think that can go too far at this point. Um, I cannot imagine, but what I've seen on the interviews of this boy's mother, she's got incredible strength. I don't know that I would be handling it as well, and I don't know if I would be as um, strong in the situation. She said, and I'm paraphrasing, that she felt like her son had done what he was supposed to do, that he came here to fulfill a role by God, and was called back home. And I don't know that I could even be standing. It's always bad news when cops show up and your spouse is working the road. Yeah. Yeah. We were very lucky he retired, and got out of it and glad. But like I said, we've got others. You only hear the bad. We need to hear more good news. Yeah. And we do need, yeah, his mother's amazing woman, so dignified and understanding. And, we do need more, right? More everything, more training for them, more social services, more true things that are going to move the needle versus continuing down the road we're continuing down. It's crazy that kids don't feel safe going to school here. It's crazy that, you know, you can no longer really, if you see someone on the side of the road, feel comfortable helping someone out, because everyone's afraid of each other. I think it's one of those things that we're going to have to handle person to person, friend to friend, stranger to stranger, and we can do, we can do better. Right, I agree. The good news seems to get filtered out. Yeah, it does. Yes, his mom, bless her. I don't think I could be that strong. In NYSC, a lot of police officers are retiring since 2020 for sure. Yeah, and part of the problem is in any industry that you're in, the people that have been there the longest are usually the ones generally that can kind of, for lack of another way to put it, shepherd the younger ones. But when you're losing that tenure, then you're losing that as well. And it's kind of it's sad to see. I don't know the recent statistics. I'm talking trash and truth became a YouTube member. Thank you very much for that. Um, my husband, when he went, for example, to the murder squad, which it's kind of interesting that, and Sandra can kind of agree, when you watch the shows, um, pick any of the Law and Orders, pick any of the crime shows, you get the idea that there are 5 detectives or 5 police officers working on anything. The reality, though, is, for example, my husband went to the murder squad. He got, I think, 8 hours of training, and then he self-educated himself. A lot of times people think they can do more than they can do, because they see on a television show where somebody took a speck of paint and then matched it to a car and matched it to a person. There are some of that technology that exists, but most departments don't have it. Um, that was the hardest time for us when he was in sex abuse, same thing, where people just thought that DNA and fingerprints and people thought they knew how that they could solve it themselves. It's really sad though when you look at the ones that are retiring that were really good at what they did and really cared. Sandra, yeah. Allegra says, "What a woman to be able to say that. I would not be speaking of that situation using any of those words. As much as I wish I could, she's in stages of dreaming, so the anger may be other times." Yeah, yeah. And hey, Yeah, I love the name of her channel as well, Talking Trice and Truths. It's probably I have some favorites out there, but definitely one of my favorites. I can't imagine her composure in the situation. No, no. And I would love to say that, I would have the faith and the I don't know. I don't know the right word. Um, it's easy to say if I were in that situation, I would respond X, but what I find with most people, including myself, is I never you can think you're going to do something or say something, but anyone will do anything under the right or wrong circumstances. And I don't believe until we're faced with something exactly what we're going to know or do. Exactly. When the science does exist, it's often too expensive for most departments. Yeah. And for them and some of those catching up, we're talking about the need for some solutions at this point. Um, Sandra, also DNA matching DNA, fingerprints, and sit to the state, it's not a quick response ever. Nope, not quick. And I will say in this case, and Memphis, I've seen some criticism of it, went very, very, very quickly to terminate the officers and charge them. And I see why that there were objections to that because in other cases it seems to have um, taken too much time. But in this case, when you have body footage, it's pretty obvious. There's no way you can really spin it any other way. It's amazing the scope of tech available in different states, etc. Using facial recognition, handheld cameras. Some don't even have dogs invest in cameras on all cops. Yeah. Yep. I'd be inconsolable, angry, or catatonic. Yeah. Yeah. I think I would be as well. But like I said, it's very hard. I mean, I've seen the interviews with her. I've seen the interviews with his stepfather, and I'm just in awe of these people and how they're able to keep it together. I think I'd be highly medicated and fragile. Yeah. And not just for that, the whole city of Memphis, they seem to keep getting things happen. And I don't know, a few hundred friends in Memphis, fabulous people. Um, you know, it's just sad. It's sad for the department. It's sad for his family. It's sad for the community. It's sad for everyone. Defund the police. And we want to have we the sad thing is with human nature is being what human nature is, we need the law enforcement. The you want it to be where when you pick up the phone to call that help is there. You want it to be there. That's what it's supposed to be. Um, but we do need other options at this point. Uh, Allegra, staging of grieving, the two are beyond stoic. I'm sure they have a meltdown moments, but they seem to know when, how, and why they have to hold it together. Yep. All right, guys. Well, it's almost the top of the hour, and I try to keep this because I try to be very respectful of Sunday nights. And I appreciate the ones that have come forward. Haley Mouse, unfortunately, um, oh, I was kidding. Yeah, I know you were kidding, and I took it that way. But when I hear that, I hear let's get more resources in to help keep everybody safe. Um, Unfortunately, it's budget cuts that damage the quality of the officers. Yep, absolutely it does. We're even seeing that in teaching now. That is not a profession I would want to be in either. And I have all the awe and respect for people um, that are teaching, but it's that fine line between, you know, you had bad teachers too, right? You had teachers that were abusive. I remember in high school, I kind of laugh at it now. A teacher that decided she dreamed that a certain student was going to come after her. And he wore black all of the time, was a little bit of a goth kid. And the principal actually told him, if you wear black tomorrow, you're gonna get suspended. Well, he didn't, but the whole entire school did. And, they were bad then, but there's good and bad in every profession. Um, Linda DB, high turnover is hurting so many industries, but especially our law enforcement. Yep. Yeah. Mr. Terrible. Yes. Pay cops better and get more quality people. Yeah. Make the restrictions higher because with the authority that they have and with the authority they have, the fact that they're armed, everything they have to see, they have to be able to be highly skilled to get through it. Hugs to yours and yours. It's a hard topic to traverse, but one in much needed discussion. Yeah. Yep. And again, it's one of those things where I'm not pretending that I have an answer, but I think it's way past the time that we start talking about solutions, where we stop in a lot of ways the blame game. It's the kid's fault because he ran. It's this, that, it's something else, and really get down to what do we need to do to improve the lives of our community and keep people safe, including our officers. What needs to happen? We can talk about it, we can make all the jokes. And I don't know about you guys, a lot of what I hear isn't really solution based. It's more, let's talk about this so we can make it a drama base. Let's talk about it so you'll click on my channel. Let's talk about it so, I can incite you. And it's not really talking about, how do we get down to answers? Because I know there are ones, and we've got, usually the best answer and the solution is in the room, meaning we just take a second to step back and really take a look at it. And politics play into it as well. Um, Sandra Ramirez, I'm so thankful Mike's department has body cams. Yes. He's a traffic enforcement officer and has saved him many times from complaints, saying he used excessive force, among other things. And that's the flip side of it, right? There's a lot of people making complaints that are unfounded, and then it incites more anger. It incites more violence on both sides. Let's see. Shall abolish public schools and send that funding to the cops. I'm gonna take that as a joke as well. Um, it protects officers and citizens alike. Yeah, yeah. Although I will say there have been more than one occasion where, because of the angle of the body camera, it appeared to show one thing and it showed something else. Um, and I'll have to go back and look at it, but there was a case where an officer was accused of shooting someone who was unarmed because the body camera footage from his angle seemed to show that he wasn't, but in reality he was. You would have had to do it from the back. But yeah, I think body cams are, to keep everybody. And not only that, when you're talking about someone trying to testify in any kind of trial, memory is notoriously bad, meaning when your brain is in front of, I can remember something traumatic if it's involving me in a way that you may view it differently if you're an outsider that's unemotionally involved looking in. Let's see. Later was a solution. Are the solutions? Appreciate your way handling these stuff out. Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Samus. I'm great, love. Um, yeah. Like I said, I think at the end of the day, I think the only thing we can do as individuals is try to be a little bit kinder, try to be a little more understanding. Um, Speak up. Like I said originally, one of the things that I was going to talk about was, how we're treating each other, and in particular, found where people are circulating that Michelle Obama's a man, and some things that people have said about Biden's wife, and all of it's about their appearance. All of it's, insulting to them as a person versus insulting to them as the position they're in. But my heart just told me that this is what I wanted to talk about tonight. Yes, Tish, we're talking about that. Many departments are now putting body cams higher on the body, like this shoulder, to show better angles. Yep. Yep. And just like in one of the one of the body cams angle and the volume seemed to look like one of the police officers was incredibly out of breath from running when the reality was, he had gotten some pepper spray in part of his eye. If you've ever been pepper sprayed, unfortunately, I have had the aftermath of pepper spray, meaning it wasn't aimed at me, but I got the pickup from it. Um, it is not fun. It's horrible. Crystal Clear Central, good day, tea and chat. Absolutely. Thank you for watching. All right, guys. Thank you for spending a little bit of time with me. Sorry for the technical issues. I appreciate the grace from like I said last week. Um, Still not quite walking. Completely right. I can put a shoe on, but that's about it. Um, Ad hominem attacks, aka jokes, just make the person saying it look stupid. Yeah, agree. And I'm not gonna say, Mama Jamma, thank you, Tish, my pleasure. And like I said, I'm not the pie in the sky saying you have to love everybody and get along with everybody. You don't even have to like everybody. But I do think there's a piece of trying to be respectful for everyone, to speak up when it's spoken up, um, to not put up with stuff that we shouldn't put up with, to push for the right thing in our communities. Really, we talk about the national politics and we talk about what's happening across the globe, but we often are not real sure what's happening in our own backyards. And being able to talk about that and speak about it and listen, I think some of us, including myself at times, have been so convinced in my opinion on something that, especially when I was younger, that I decided I was right no matter what. And what I've come to the conclusion of getting old is that I actually know very little. And we're one document away, we're one camera angle away, we're one piece away from everything that we think we quote unquote know being turned on its head. That's why I call myself an eternal student versus an expert on anything. There's a lot of things I know a lot about. I'm a nerd. I'll go ahead and tell you that. I grew up reading encyclopedias and playing Trivial Pursuit instead of watching television because that's what you did in my father's house. But um, I never claimed to know anything but I do know how I can treat people, and I do know what I can speak up about. Thanks for covering this and sort of representing the real side of Leo families. Yeah, I mean, we see Sandra, and you know, we, that there are people in the apartment that shouldn't be there. And you also know there are people in the apartment that are absolutely doing the best they can, and they run into roadblocks every other minute. There are laws that just do not make sense. We have to get away from someone making a mistake, committing a crime, to making that person necessarily a good or a bad person. Because in a lot of cases, I don't know about you guys, I am so thankful Facebook was not around when I was in high school. I did a lot of things that I would not be proud of if they were front and center on anybody's YouTube page. I just didn't get caught. Does that make me a better person than those that did? Absolutely not. It just means I wasn't in the wrong place at the wrong time. Um, talking tries and trays to side for humanity as a whole. Yep. Yep. Sorry, off topic. Is Scott doing Innocence Chronicles anymore? I don't think he's still on. He was in the car just a few minutes ago. I know that they were pivoting a little bit on that show, but I think they are. Um, I meant Tish autocorrect intervene. Yeah, that's fine. I understand. Um, Sunk cost fallacy though doesn't matter what new info comes out for people. For some people, yeah. Yeah, I also think about that though too, Crystal. There was a point when the vast majority believed the world was flat, and that's almost laughable now. But that was what people thought, and the people who knew better wanted people to keep thinking that way, and people who tried to speak out against it very often had very bad consequences for that. And there are still people that think the earth is flat, and we ridiculed that, but it wasn't that long ago that everybody did. So, Ellen, I'm so thankful FB wasn't around then. Yes, definitely. And I mean, like I said, if one day maybe a private isn't asked me anything, like I said, I have done a lot of things that I've got skeletons. That I'm not. It's not that I'm ashamed of. I mean, if they came out, I'd make them dance, right? But at the same time, I have no right to look down on anybody else. How did all 5 Leos get swept up into his behavior? I don't know, and I don't know that anyone really knows right now. I can tell you though, when it comes to pursuit, when it comes to any officer in perceived trouble, it's not that unusual for others to come to the scene. It's also, I did read, in full disclosure, I'm not sure if this is the case or not, that one or two of the officers were technically off duty but still had a radio. That's not that unusual either. If my husband had known of, say, someone in a bad situation, he would have stopped and helped too. Um, we lost a friend that way, actually. He was off duty, decided to go try to help. It was a domestic being called into a apartment complex, and no one knew he was there because he just decided to ease over and help. And it ended up that the perpetrator of the violence against the female took him out. And when the officers responding rolled up on it, then they found it. So CMS, sorry I didn't make it sooner. A suspect I'd love to be involved with. Yeah. And I'm going to too, if some of you would like to come on and talk at some point, I'd love to hear what you have to say. We can open that up. I can drop you a StreamYard. Thank God no cell phones. Yeah, the days of being able to call your parents from somebody's house, so it would show up on the ID, and then you really went somewhere else, with other things. It's worse. Chris Mullen, yeah, social media makes everything worse for kids these days. Yep, yep. It's cameras on phones have really changed the world. Yes. Imagine if teenagers today could only take 24 photos and had to pay for the film and development. Yeah. Yeah. No need to thank me. I'll always support the content creators that have respect for all. Thank you. Thank you. Talking trials and truth. We not only didn't speak up, we turned a blind eye. Yeah. And sometimes I don't know if it's as simple as turn a blind eye as much as fear of consequence for ourselves, right? Because we all have our own families and loved ones, and while it's easy to say you should stand up no matter what, the practice of that can actually be a little more challenging, right? Um, my husband wrote a book with my brother-in-law that it's called Music City Blues, and I have one story from it on my channel about a dog that helped them get some burglars. But we were kind of nervous when that came out because my husband was still employed at the time, and what was the consequence for that? It turned out to not be one. So, um, wasn't here for Leo's story, but working in a similar industry, similar culture, ethos, etc. Seniority matters. You don't call out shit unless you're 100% sure you're right, and the boss will back you. Yeah, yeah. I'm a jam. I used to think humans were civilized. Yeah, and I don't know if we're less civilized or it's more in our face all the time. We're less community. Like I know my neighbors on one side of my house and the other. I don't know the ones across the street. That's not their fault. That's mine. Um I'm no saint and thank God no camera phones or FB. Yep. Pictures were expensive yeah, pictures were expensive at one point. That's true. Absolutely. Trash and trace. Yes, sometimes we did it out of fear. Absolutely. 'Cause we don't wanna be targets either. Yeah. I mean, I remember a, incident when I did work in loss prevention at Target. There was a young lady who, again, domestic violence, had been involved with someone who was married. He happened to be, we're gonna call it a pastor because that's not exactly the description, but that's what we're gonna call it. And the newspapers were, he threatened her a few times, and actually, I'd seen him in the parking lot and told him to leave myself. Ended up ending her life, and the newspapers were basically making her out to look like she was a troublemaker and um, a homewrecker And she wasn't perfect, but she wasn't that. I really wanted to write something in, and my husband's cautioned me against doing that, because at the time, he didn't want me to become a target, and that's I'd love to say I wrote it anyway, but I didn't. I just kinda let the noise die down, and I still regret that, and I regret not doing more. Sandra Maris, anytime you want me on, especially on these topics like this, feel free to reach out to me. Yes. If let you guys let me know in the comments on the video if you would like some times where we can have some people on and talk. And two guys, we have some great creators here. We've got Cool Frog. Scott was on a few minutes ago. Talking Trash and Truths, Clumsy Clairvoyant, love her channel. Please make sure you check out the channels of the ones that you like. Because these are great people. And I would not say that if I didn't believe it. I just would say nothing. Especially, I will say this too. I said something about how I liked Pascal's coverage because it was balanced and even. Um, that's part of why I like to listen to Cool Frog too, is because while he definitely has opinions and they're strong opinions, he doesn't abuse others for their opinion. And I think that is a piece that is unfortunately all too common with YouTube creators, where if somebody disagrees with you, you get abusive. I have become friends with a girl on Twitter who is very, very, very left wing, very, and honestly, my political affiliations would surprise you because I'm kind of none of them. I know too much about politics, but um, she's very, very far left, very anti-Trump, very anti all of this, very anti gun laws, very all of it, right? And some things I agree with her on, and some things I don't. And it's interesting that I got called out by somebody after I replied to her tweet because the question was, if you could change, if you could get rid of something in America, what would you get rid of? And I said, basically that I wouldn't, because who am I to decide what that is? Because I don't know what consequences it would be. Well, somebody, of course, attacked me immediately. And I said, well, in the instance that it took you to attack me, maybe that kept you from something bad happening to you because you spent that extra few seconds doing it. And we've become able to have conversation. And I think that's one of the things that's really important, is to have conversation. That is why, and I don't get to listen to Cool Frog as much as I used to. My work has changed, just because of my hours. But I would definitely suggest that you check out his channel, because delivers truth, but with kindness as well, and that's kind of rare to have. Um, Made me think, someone call the cops, others turn away. There's sometimes people need to intervene and call somebody and take action against something wrong. Yeah. Or any other topic like genealogy. Yeah, the genealogy ones. I have gotten a lot of emails about that as well too. Sandra, I want to get back with you as well. I'm putting together a website and wanted to put some resources there for people. Talking to yes, Cool Frog is the best. I've been honored to be on his channel more than once. And again, guys, to be honest with you, I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I'm neither. I would love to see more none of the above buttons. To be honest with you, um, there are pieces of each that I can say I agree with. There are pieces of each that I can say I absolutely don't agree with. I think it's more smoke and mirrors. And I think we're all in the land of Oz, and the wizard is not the wizard. There's someone else behind the curtain most of the time. But I try to be not middle of the road. I have my own opinions, but I can see where people come from. Usually I can argue both sides of any topic because nothing's simple, right? It's all about the magic word respect. Yeah. And that is one thing about most of the chats I'm in, and most of the ones I moderate, for the most part, people are like that with each other, even if they don't agree. It's very rare that you see people actually attacking other people. And it's easy to attack people. It's easy to attack people when you hide behind, a acronym on YouTube or on a website or an ID name. That's why I use my own name, because people are always worried about somebody else doxing, and I'm going to dox myself before anybody else can. But you know, if I put my name on it, to me, it automatically forces me to be more careful about what I say and how I treat people because my actual name is on it. I have an unusual name, not hard to track me down if you really wanted to. So I really try to not say anything online I wouldn't say to the person. And I think that's missing in a lot of things. Sandra, I worked as a dispatcher. More often than not, it was a bystander that called 911 and ultimately saved them. Yes. Yep. Personal wellness is so important, CMS. I have found many supportive people on these streams. Yes, I can't follow streams that are all about controversy. We do a great job of leaving politics at the door. Yeah. Because politics are just another word for polarizing in a lot of ways, right? Um, and it's sad to me. Gerald Ford, and again, I'm going to paraphrase. I think I remember the quote pretty closely. But Gerald Ford's wife was quoted once as saying, it used to be we could disagree, right? And even though they agree on things that they don't say they agree. And now it's about attacking the person. We look at, I was reading again for what I was going to do, talking about, how one of the first ladies dressed versus the other one. Why do we care? Why does that matter? It doesn't ultimately, but we still seem to get stuck on these superficial things that really at the end of the day, I'm more concerned about education. I'm more concerned about our troops. I'm more concerned about what threats to our community. I'm more concerned about making sure citizens have equal opportunity, than I am what a first lady decides to wear or not wear as a model. Um, Education about where people are coming from is so needed. Many forgot that their perspective isn't the only one. Yeah. And also the freedom to let others change their minds. You know, I think as you mature, that you realize that one of two things, you either become so hard and fast in what you think that you can't move on it, or you try to realize that maybe you don't know everything. It's kind of like when you're teenagers, you think you know everything. And there was a joke in my principal's office, move out while you know anything and pay your own bills. The reality, though, is that teenagers did know something, and the ones paying the bills may not know everything. You got to kind of come to the middle. Kim Farrah, I'm sorry, Farnham. Thank you. We definitely need more kindness online. Yeah, preach. And I think it does come from one person to one person. One person seeing something that's not okay and taking up and having the nerve to take up for the other person, right? Um, Haley Mouse, oh my gosh, you perfectly described my political views. Yeah, and from growing up in it, my dad used to always say if we knew what judges, lawyers, and police did behind closed doors, we'd want to hang them all. Meaning, there's a lot more behind the curtains than we realize. And I think growing up in that, growing up, seeing him work on campaigns, seeing him run for seats he didn't want because somebody gave him quote unquote seed money to do it. I became very, very open to looking for what's really going on versus what somebody is telling me. Sandra, it sounds good. I'm starting genealogy YouTube channel, but I'm doing research on it first and get my channel together. If you want to reach out to me, my email address is on my channel, and I think I gave you my cell phone. If not, remind me, and I'll send it to you. Starting a YouTube channel, I've been on now since about August, and I definitely have things I would have not done in the beginning and things I would do differently. Crystal clear, even with ranked choice voting, sometimes it's still none of the above, but everyone has a preference of who is the least worst. Yeah, where it gets down to who is the least worst. Yeah, when you still have to make a choice versus no choice. Allegra bingo. There's often someone else behind the curtain. Pay no attention. Doesn't work for all. Yeah. Yep. Typos. Of course. Um, I love it. Pollers call and ask if I'm conservative or liberal, and I say yes. Yep. I got called out in another one that I really likes, channel saying, because they were very anti-women, which I'm seeing a lot of now. That and I said something to the effect of, he was saying something to the effect of all women used sexual favors to get where they wanted to go, or something stupid to that effect. And I was like, no, we don't. He's like, well, let me guess, you're a feminist. I'm like, no, but you're angry, which means somebody hurt you. And I'm not going to say that you're a misogynist. I'm not going to say you're this or that, but I can tell you've had a situation that's personal that you're kind of translating into being everybody. Because when we get hurt by somebody who's in any type of group, we automatically think all of them are like that. Um, a lot of Twitter is Republicans are X, Y, or Z. Well, no, people are Republicans, and not all people that are Republicans agree on a lot of things, let alone everything. Sandra, yeah, me too. Um, Crystal clear, Central, I've dozed a dozen times. Yeah, what? Or doxed yourself a few times. Yeah, yeah. Nurse B, I loved how my community came together to help in a superstorm, Sandy. Good night, putting mine to bed. Good night, guys. Yeah, I run a little later than normal, but want to make sure that I kind of give everybody a voice. I like her again. It doesn't matter, and people are fixated on petty issues versus things that cause them real emotions and provoke controversy, internal, external. Yep, I would agree with that. I would agree with that. Crystal clear. I'm thinking only reason fashion would matter would be in a couple cases where clothes were made slash who buy, and if something was wildly inappropriate. Yeah, I kind of agree with that too. Catherine Fraser, I think the worst perspective you can have is I wouldn't do that. Is so self-focused. Yeah. Yep. And I am a big believer in anyone would do anything or the right or wrong set of circumstances. You want to say that you would never steal, but if it got down to your children did not have food and the choice was they starve or you steal, and there are people in the world facing that decision, all of a sudden, which one becomes the more moral high ground? Some people would say, nope, I still wouldn't steal no matter what. But when you're actually in that situation, what are you going to do? So let me see. I want to make sure that I got everybody. Yeah, babe, nice response to that situation. Thank you. Good night, Nurse Sam. Okay, guys, I'm going to sign off. I've got some more content coming up. I'm going to don't see Liberty on right now, but I'm going to go a little bit deeper into Dorothy Kilgallen. If you don't know who she is, she was a reporter that was, some believe, silenced because she knew too much about the JFK assassination. I'm going to go into a little bit more of her. Mark Shaw, who some of you saw on my channel, I'm going to try to have him back because he came out with a new book. So you're going to see a little more historical content, a little more Tennessee content. Like I said, take a minute, check out the people that are content creators here, because everyone that I've seen that's popped in tonight are people I would recommend without hesitation. And I'm very careful about who I recommend, especially Scott, if you're listening. He's the one that kind of got me started on this journey of mine on YouTube. Thought about it for a long time before that, but then just decided to do it. And glad I did. I've been honored to have met, some wonderful people, and people who've made me question myself and what I think. And I think at the end of the day, that's a blessing. I'm Catherine Goodnight. Looking at more on Dorothy. Yep, she's a name that if you don't know, you should. I think we should find out who she is. All right, guys, wherever you are, thank you. We went a little over. Apologize. I try to keep it at an hour, but good afternoon, good morning, good night, and take care of yourself. And where you can, take care of others. Thanks.